Derek, Ruth has a very, very special story. His mom, Jennifer, is here as well. His dad, Royce, is here. So I can't wait to dive into this, get to know you all a little bit as well. Right out the gate. All right. How did you all, and Derek, you specifically, how did you become a fan of Nebraska football? What drew you to the team and the game as well?
I was literally a fan from birth. I was born into a true Husker family. In 1995, the year I was born, two of my uncles were playing football for the Cornhuskers. So the love and tradition was instilled in myself from a very young age. As I grew older and continued to attend games, the atmosphere at Memorial Stadium was contagious. The 90,000 plus fan base created a unique and exciting experience, and I couldn't help but remain a Husker fan. That caused me to dream big in hopes to one day carry on the legacy of playing for the Huskers.
I'll be honest with you. I listened to that, and I can relate to that a lot. I grew up watching your uncles. Obviously, they're not my uncles, but I grew up watching Joel and Jeff Makovicka and all that. And I think there's a lot of Husker fans. Jake can probably relate to that. The love of Husker football starts at a young age, and it's very, very exciting. And we're going to get into more of your story in just a second. But right out the top, just so people know who are just tuning in, he had an unfortunate accident. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the recovery. We're going to talk about the support staff, the support system. We're going to talk about his book. All right, again, that's The 8-Minute Flight. All right, The 8-Minute Flight's the name of the book. Derek Ruth, The Miraculous Story of the Boy Who Chose Earth Instead of Heaven. Okay, but I want to chat with Mom and Dad real quick. So obviously you see him. He's becoming a gigantic Husker fan at a very young age. All right, are you big Husker fans? I see you're rocking the Nebraska polo, but are you big Husker fans? Did you help brainwash him at all?
I helped him a little bit. You know, I watched the Huskers back in the 80s and kind of dated myself. But, you know, when I think of Turner Gill, Mike Rozier, Irving Fryer, you know, those are the guys I used to watch growing up. And then, of course, everything that Nebraska did in the 90s. I mean, yeah, I was a huge Husker fan. So probably had a little bit of influence on Derek through the years.
Just a smidge?
What about just a little bit.
What about Mom here?
Well, yes, I guess I was a Husker fan growing up. So I was the oldest and then had 4 younger brothers.
Okay.
So I don't think I had a choice but to watch football every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in our home. So I think it was just instilled in being from Nebraska. I think you always had pride in knowing that you had a really good football program inside the state.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And I think my daughters can relate.
Yeah.
I have one daughter who loves football. The rest, they're just like Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the fall. We're watching football. Okay, Dad.
Yeah.
But my other daughter gets excited, but the other 4, not so much. All right. Can you tell me about maybe a specific memorable moment or a game you had watching Nebraska football growing up that sticks out to you?
Some of the fondest memories I have weren't of the actual games, but all of the activities leading up to the game. I remember tailgating before home games and playing football in the parking lot with my uncles Justin and Jordan. I remember traveling to every away game in my grandparents' motor home and waiting outside the locker room to hopefully catch a glimpse of my favorite player.
Who was his favorite player? Was it his uncles?
Who was your favorite player? Joel? Oh, are you saying that because he's going to be here shortly? Yeah.
That's a smart answer. That's a smart answer right there.
That was the right answer.
I like that.
That was the right answer.
Also liked Amon Green and Lawrence Phillips. Because Derek used to wear his football jerseys out in the backyard playing football when he was younger, and he used to put their jerseys on, and we'd go out and play catch and do things like that.
So you may be aware, Amon's a part of a show here on the Ticket, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. The Drive. Yeah. Chris Raff, AC Davis, Aaron Davis. I'm sorry about that, AD. Amon and then Nick Sainer. They do a phenomenal job. So I want to plug that show, but Amon does a great job, and obviously one of the all-time great Huskers as well. And I want to learn a little bit more about your story specifically, Derek. So tell me about your childhood and how football was a part of your life.
Football was a big part of my childhood growing up. Whether I was playing the game, watching games with my family, or growing up in a football-loving community, I was a very active outdoor kid growing up. I spent many hours playing sports with my brothers and friends in the backyard.
That is awesome. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Now, tell me, Can you tell me what you remember from your injury and what took place?
I remember everything leading up to date of my injury. My body was in football condition. It already had bruises and other marks on my elbows from the hits I had taken at running back, and also from hitting people while playing linebacker. The day I was injured was a usual nothing out of the ordinary fall day in Nebraska on September 6, 2008. In the middle of the second half, while running the ball, I was tackled, and my right arm went limp, and I fumbled the ball. The coaches could tell something was wrong with me because I was never known to fumble. Timeout was called, and I went over to the sidelines, and one of the coaches, who was also a physician's assistant, began asking me questions. I answered every question correctly. Then minutes later, I screamed, my head took off my helmet and collapsed into my coach's arms. That is the last thing I remember.
So, mom and dad, I assume you're at the game, or at least one of you is at the game, maybe both of you.
I was actually coaching.
Okay, so when you see this, what is your reaction?
Well, when I first saw it, I knew things weren't right. So
Yeah.
we did call a timeout, like you mentioned, and then we went out to the field. To one of the other coaches went out and they brought him over, and they started asking him questions. And Derek was answering, the questions correctly, and then he collapsed.
Hmm.
And then, everything just happened so fast after that. So, I panicked. Of course, the gentleman that was the PA there, I leaned over to him and I said, "What's going on? Is he going to die?" What's such a drastic change, and so many things were unexpected. It was just like I lost all control.
I think that's understandable. What was your reaction? I don't know if you saw it or you heard about it. What was your reaction, Mom?
So I was actually in the stands, and initially, like Derek said, he was running the ball, and I can just really see it in slow motion. He was running along the sideline, basically wide open. And I just remember his left arm just going forward and then back, and then the ball just falling out. And I was like, what in the world is he doing? And I even turned to another mom and I'm like, what in the heck? And she goes, I don't know what just happened. And then I just had this instinct like something was wrong. Um, and so basically they called the timeout. They took him to the sidelines. I saw the other coach, who was a physician's assistant, talking to him. And then at that time, I basically ran to the sideline
Mhm.
to see, and by the time I got there he was collapsed. And then I just had someone grab me and say, get in the car, get to Brian West. um Sorry.
No, that's okay.
So
Perfectly okay.
so basically I got in a car with some friends and I left and headed to West. And then just through updates, um I knew what was going on, that the life flight was coming, that he was unresponsive. Um so like I said, I missed out on a lot of the stuff that happened down on the field just because I left right away to get to West before he arrived. But yeah, I think it's still like you don't ever forget that stuff.
It seems like yesterday, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about his recovery, but before we get to that, and ultimately the book and what led to the book and everyone that's been involved, there's been a lot of cool people. There's been a pretty cool support team.
Right.
Okay. But what was the official injury called? Like, what was it? What was it?
So basically, he suffered a traumatic brain injury, which was caused by a subdermal hematoma.
Okay.
So initially, when he arrived at Brian West, he was totally unresponsive. They intubated him and stuff on the field. He was unresponsive the whole time in the life flight, unresponsive when he got to West. And so they took him immediately to CT, saw that he had swelling and bleeding on the brain, and then he was immediately taken into surgery. So right away, they removed a skull flap, like took part of his skull off.
Oh, okay. Okay.
On the left side, in hopes that his brain could swell and there wouldn't be any pressure.
Okay.
Did that, and then 3 days later, his brain had continued to swell, so they had to go in and remove the right side.
Okay.
So he is kind of special. Is that the right word? Or lucky that you continue to swell, so he had to remove both. But it was technically a subdermal hematoma.
Okay.
To answer your question.
I would say, from my vantage point anyways, inspirational. That's what I would say. Okay, but let's talk about your recovery a little bit. All right. What did your recovery look like, and what all did it entail?
My recovery was slow, painfully slow. I don't remember much about my first 17 days in ICU, but I do remember waking up and feeling intense pain. Most of my rehabilitation memories started when I was admitted to Madonna Rehab Hospital here in Lincoln. I remember feeling scared and confused being inside a body that no longer worked and unable to communicate that. I worked hard and the days were long and grueling. I would attend speech therapy, occupational, and physical therapy twice daily and continue with rehab into the evening only to wake up the next day and start the process again. I was an inpatient at Madonna for 3 months and then moved home but returned to Madonna daily for therapy for many years.
I could only imagine what that feeling would be like, just unable to move your body the way that you want. What was that like as a parent through this recovery process? And I'm sure he has frustrations and things of that nature. What was that like for you two?
I think it was incredibly hard and difficult. Um, we now, 1 minute you have a healthy child that's very athletic and kind of at the peak, um, you know, of his life. Everything's going great, and the next minute you have someone that cannot even open their eyes.
Mm.
And when it initially started, he was, we were 15, 16, 17 days in ICU, and we were finally able to have him communicate with maybe like opening his eyes. Like,
Okay.
can you hear us? Can you open your eyes? And then it progressed to he was able to give us a thumbs up on his left hand, was how he communicated. Um, but it was very gut wrenching, it was very hard. And I think one of the hardest things with traumatic brain injury and the whole recovery process is normally when you have an injury, say it's a knee injury, an ACL,
Mhm.
there's always a protocol, or what 3 weeks might look like out, or 6 weeks you're going to be doing this.
Mhm.
With a brain injury, no one could give us an answer. And, we had all of the questions like, what do you think he'll be doing in 3 months? What will he do in 5 months? And they kept saying, it's just a marathon. We don't know. And I think that was the hardest, is not knowing what the outcome might be or what his life would look like. And I think we just always, or I know I did right away, I thought if I can get through the next second. And then it was, can we get through another minute? And then that just started to get, can we get through 5 minutes? So I think that was really the hardest thing in his recovery process is how painfully slow it is. When you said that, I'm like, yes, yeah, it was grueling. Yes.
That makes so much sense. Anybody who's had surgery knows that, hey, I'm going to be in a boot for 4 weeks,
Yes.
and then I'm going to be on whatever, if it's crutches, or I'm going to walk, or I'll start jogging at week 8, or I'll start planting if it's an ACL at month 3, very slow cutting.
Yeah.
That would make it harder. Just the question marks, and you've got to go day by day or whatever it is, week by
Right.
week, and
Right.
that makes a lot of sense. But just like in football, okay, you had a team that helped you recover: doctors, surgeons, family, and friends. Can you talk about the important support system that was in your healing journey, whether it be Coach Osborne, Dennis LeBlanc, Tim Clare, Bo Pelini, and anyone else?
My support system was and is unmeasurable. It was humbling when I recall all of the people that have helped me on this journey. There have been numerous doctors, surgeons, and friends that have remained part of my life. I can recall many within the Husker football family that have helped along the way. Coach Osborne was instrumental in helping me transition to Madonna Rehabilitation Hospital. After high school graduation, Dennis LeBlanc and Tim Clare helped me during my time at the University of Nebraska Lincoln. Coach Pelany and I met while one of my brothers was playing baseball with his son Patrick. Bo and I would talk a lot about my injury and my faith. He understood my concerns and fears about starting my college career. He helped make it a success. He helped with my classes, let me hang out in his office, and introduced me to many players on the team.
I know you and Coach Pelini have a very close relationship. That is awesome. And I love I even see your face lighting up just mentioning Coach Pelini. That's awesome. All right, tell me, and we're going to bring Coach Osborne, and I just saw your cousin Joel walk in, but a couple more questions before we go to this first break. All right, tell me about your family.
I am the oldest of 5 boys. I have 4 younger brothers.
That's awesome. I love big families. I have 6 kids of my own,
Yeah.
although 5 daughters. So my son's completely outnumbered. That's
Yeah.
awesome. All right, Mom, I have to ask, you're slightly outnumbered. How does that work
Definitely.
in your house?
I don't know. Like everybody says I should be the princess and the queen, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. If they're listening, I'm like, I'd love to be one. Yeah.
I will tell you, she's the toughest one. in the house.
Okay, all right. I
Everybody
could see
knows,
that.
Don't mess with Mom.
I could see that.
Yeah.
So in my son's defense, we do have 2 dogs. So one of them's the male. So it's not just him. Did you have any cats
we
of any
have a male
kind?
dog. How does that
Oh,
work?
you're outnumbered even more.
Yes,
Oh,
we
boy.
got in
yes.
trouble when they picked
Oh,
him up.
boy. What kind of dog?
Of course, my boys picked that. It's a little Morky Poo. So
I
it's a
don't
tiny
know.
little dog.
I'm not familiar with that.
It's
Okay.
like a little poodle, Maltese, teeny
Okay.
tiny, like 8 pounds. That is
Okay.
a boy.
We have mini Aussie. You've seen the big Australian.
yeah.
So we have 2 of them. So
Okay.
all right. They don't shed that bad. So I was very pleased with
Yes,
that. So was my wife.
exactly.
All right. One more question, then we'll go to break and we'll bring everyone in. And I want to get to talking about the book as well. Did your family, and I assume the answer to this is yes, but I want to hear what you have to say, Derek. Did your family play a pivotal role in getting you to this point here today?
I would not be where I am today without them.
That is awesome. It's clear your parents obviously love you as you would expect. They're very vested. And I want to ask Mom and Dad, having 4 brothers. All right. What's that like having 5 sons? And what's it like for Derek having 4 brothers?
I think it's pretty cool because they really all look up to Derek. You know, after Derek's accident, the thing I noticed the most is they never really gave him a break in a good way. He was still their older brother. They would argue, fight around the house, whatever the case may be. But if you mess with one of them, you're going to mess with all of them.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And you need someone. I mean, obviously you need love and care and whatnot. But sometimes you just need somebody who's just going to treat you like a sibling. Sometimes that's a good thing too.
Right.
And they did. I mean, they treated him like that. You know, through the years, Derek's went to a lot of their sporting events, and he was their biggest fan. Still is.
That is awesome. That is awesome. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Joel Makovicka, Coach Osborne are going to join us. They're a pivotal part of this story as well. And again, the book, The 8-Minute Flight. Now, real quick, we're going to talk about it a little bit. Where can people get it, though? Where can they find it? Is there a website? What bookstore is it in? Where can they get it?
Locally, it's being sold at Gloria Deo in both Lincoln and Omaha locations. And then it is also available on Amazon.
Okay, awesome.
And yep, he has the 8-minute flight.com is his landing page, which gives you all the information for that.
Okay, awesome. All right, The 8-Minute Flight, the miraculous story of a boy who chose Earth instead of heaven. I'm joined by Derek Ruth, his parents, Royce and Jennifer. We're also joined by his cousin, Joel Makovicka, and Coach Tom Osborne as well. Now, Coach has to leave here in about 10 minutes, so I'm going to direct a few questions to him initially, and then obviously we'll chat with everyone else, including Joel. And I got a couple more questions for Derek pertaining to the book and what's in it. But Coach Osborne, how did you come to know Derek? How did you come to know the family and his story as well?
Well, primarily, I think, his dad got a hold of me. And so we visited, and, Derek is a bright guy and picks things up very quickly. And so even though we had to converse more through his dad and his parents, I found him to be a very bright guy and a guy that's had a lot of perseverance
Mm-hmm.
due to the things that have happened in his life, and that he's overcome a lot. So certainly have a great deal of admiration for him.
When you see a young man who's playing football, sounds like he's having the time of his life, big time Husker fan, an unfortunate traumatic brain injury occurs. Not everyone would respond to that in a positive manner because it's obviously very challenging to say the least. But here he is sitting right here. He's got like the biggest smile on his face. He's trying to inspire other people and make an impact in other people's lives in a positive manner. When you see a young man like Derek and how he is as he sits here today after everything he's been through, what's your reaction to something like that?
Well, as I said earlier, my main reaction is just a good deal of admiration for him, because when something bad happens, you can go either way.
Mm-hmm.
You can use it in a way that's positive, or you can let it tear you apart. And Derek has responded very positively, and I admire all that he's gone through and his attitude and what he's carried forward, because I think he, in a certain way, has been able to inspire lots of other people. And so I think that's probably one of the things that he's been best at contributing in his life.
What do you think people can take away from the book, The 8-Minute Flight? Again, The 8-Minute Flight, the miraculous story of the boy who chose Earth instead of heaven, Derek Ruth. Okay, what do you think people can take away from this book if they read it?
Well, I think that first thing is most people would say, well, they're very fortunate that
Mm-hmm.
something like this has not happened. So a certain amount of gratitude. And I tend to be a spiritual person. And when somebody says that they have encountered God and have had an experience, I tend to take that to heart and believe it, because those things do happen. And I know that that's been a good part of his journey. And so I think that the book, as I've read it, is certainly inspirational and something that some people would enjoy reading very much, from the aspect of just overcoming adversity and also spiritual encounter.
What can you tell me through your experience with the whole family? Royce, Jennifer, mom, dad. He's got 4 siblings that treat him just like a sibling, which is obviously something we talked about can be healing medicine as well. But through your experience getting to know them, what can you tell me about the Ruth family?
Well, of course, I know Joel and I know Jeff a lot more, because
that's good or bad.
Yeah.
I said, go block this guy, block that guy. And most of the time they did it.
Yeah, most of the time. All right.
Yeah. And so I certainly have had a good experience with them. And of course, I've just recently gotten to know the other part of the Ruth family. And that's been rather brief compared to Jeff and Joel, which goes back quite a while.
Talk to me about Jeff and Joel. What was it like coaching them, and what's something maybe people may not know about them that they might find interesting, or what was it like coaching them in general?
Well, Jeff came as a walk-on, as I recall, and he's one of those guys that developed. The thing that I'm really concerned about right now is the proposal that the NCAA has now is pretty much going to wipe out walk-ons.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're limiting to 105 scholarships, and people develop at different rates of maturation. Some guys, when they're 17, are very different than other guys at 17.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are fully mature, and they're not going to get a whole lot better.
Yep.
And then some guys are still improve into their 20s. And Jeff was that way. He was a guy that came and wasn't real high on our radar screen. Played at a very small school, but he kept working at it, getting better, and became a really good player. Joel, we realized was going to be pretty good, and I think Jeff's experience didn't hurt to have Jeff ahead of him. But Joe was really a great fullback for us. Both of them played fullback. And that position is kind of non-existent anymore.
Mhm.
Everybody's got an extra receiver, an extra running back. But I think people have missed something because the fullback was really critical to us. And we always had a good running game, and fullback was a big part of that.
All right, one Nebraska football question, and then I want to get back to Derek's story here. But you mentioned they're basically legislating the walk-on, and you can answer this too. They're legislating the walk-on program out of college football. They're going to 105. Everyone can be on scholarship, but they're limiting the amount of guys who can be on the team, which is going to limit those guys who would have taken longer to develop. And that's something that Nebraska football had so much success with over the years. Matt Rule's a former walk-on. It's something he wanted to continue to emphasize. How's that going to affect Nebraska football going forward, in your opinion?
Well, it's going to make it more complicated. And the thing that we did is we actually recruited walk-ons. We try to single out maybe 20 players, mostly from Nebraska, that we thought were pretty close, that had a good chance. And I'd say 50% of those guys would end up playing quite a bit for us and really made a big difference to us. And so this is a relatively sparsely populated state. It's not like Texas. It's not like Florida. It's not like California. And so that really was what gave us a shot in the arm. And the other thing, of course, that we did was we had a very good weight program. Boyd Epley was probably the first full-time strength coach. And we also did a lot of things with nutrition, a lot of things with academics. And as a result, we felt that we enabled people to develop and do well. And of course, a lot of people began to do that also. So we kind of lost that edge. But I think that it will make it a little bit more difficult if you can't have good walk-on players. And I really am sorry about that because I can't tell you how many guys I've coached who have done really well later in life. And some of them really didn't play very much, but they will always point back to that experience as something that really was very instrumental to whatever success they had. And I think it's relatively un-American to tell somebody they can't pay their own way to school and try it, you know. And so I'm really, really concerned about a lot of things that are happening right now in college athletics.
Un-American. That's the best way I've heard it put. It is straight up un-American. Jake, I don't have to ask all the questions here. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask at any point?
Not necessarily. I think Dr. Tom's got to get going, but we can certainly continue this conversation with everybody else.
Coach, thank you for joining us, and thank you for kind of connecting me with the family as well. Thank you very much.
Well, I had a good tour of Lincoln Getty. So
you didn't go all the way to my house too, did you?
Yes.
Gosh. Sorry about that.
I was started there, and then I was told 110-040, and I thought, well, it's just out near Adams Place.
Yeah.
And so I saw a lot of the countryside.
You guys got here quicker than I do. I must drive slowly. I was impressed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Coach.
Derek, good to see you. Good to see you guys. Joel, good to see you. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Coach. All right, Joel, talk to me about, because obviously Derek's your cousin.
Actually, he's my nephew.
What'd I say? I meant nephew. Sorry. Derek's your nephew. Okay.
Maybe we should say he's my cousin.
Yeah. Same age. They're the same age.
Yeah.
So he actually mentioned you and Jeff as one of his inspirations for why he became such a big fan of Nebraska football specifically. But what does it mean to you to see, as Coach mentioned? I mean, this is something that could have gone two different ways, and they've chosen to take it in such a positive direction and be an inspiration. But what's it mean to you when you see a young man who's turning something that was obviously unfortunate into a positive thing?
God, that's a great question. You know, he does talk about, and I think he did look up to Jeff and I, and sometimes that's been, a little bit of, I felt like a burden, because is that something to where this is why this happened? Because our family was so big into football and we had successful careers. And I know that's something what kids wanted. is to have a successful career in any of the athletics. But football became one of those things because of kind of what Jeff and I did at Nebraska and win a national championship. So, I never wanted it to be like that, because sometimes that's a big burden to say, like, hey, was he doing this just because, or was he going over and above, or was he not telling us about injuries, even as a junior high kid? Because he thought it had to be so tough to play this game that he was just going out there and doing it. But, as I see Derek, and I've kind of said this in his book, and I tell people this all the time, is I probably had a harder time dealing with it than he has, and I feel bad for my younger brothers and his younger brothers, because going through something like that and seeing that, it's hard to come back and play. So if I was still in the NFL and playing when this happened, I don't know if that would be something to where I could be like, I can stick my head in there. And it's a testament to this family and to Jenny and Royce and Derek that all the younger boys played football because they wanted to play football. And it's one of those things where you see Derek, and he is a kid that handles it better than I would ever handle it. He's a kid that I kind of admire the way he's handled it and the way he's taken this all in stride, and his faith is not shaken. Because at some point, this football ends for everybody.
Mhm.
And it's not just football, it's athletics. And for everybody. It ended for me, it ended for you.
Mhm.
It ended too quick for Derek, and it still hasn't shaken him. There's been times it's probably shaken him, but I know his faith, and he's helped me in my faith because of the way he came through it and the way his positive outlook is on everything. You have to admire the kid or the young man.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The young man. I'm not going to lie to you. When I say smiley face, I look over here and he's got the biggest smiley face in the room, and that's beyond inspirational to me. But let's talk about, okay, this book is something you spent the past few years on. It's a book recounting your emotional journey of resilience and recovery called The 8-Minute Flight. Why is it called The 8-Minute Flight?
The book is called The 8-Minute Flight because that is the time it took the live flight to get to the hospital after leaving the football field in Malcolm.
So talk to me. What was your biggest inspiration to wanting to write this book and recount your experiences?
My biggest motivation for writing this book was to let people know that anything is possible with hard work, discipline, and most importantly, God.
So there's obviously a lot of things that can be taken from this book. All right. What's the biggest thing that you think readers can learn from the book, The 8-Minute Flight?
I feel like readers of my book will learn many things about me from all areas of my life. They will learn about my love of athletics, my family, and my strong faith. I share my unique experiences and the spiritual power that helped me overcome and preserve.
So what's the next step for you? Okay. Now that you have released your book, all right, what's the next step for you, Derek?
That's a good question, Adam. The initial response from my book has been overwhelming, and I have been approached by a few organizations about speaking. I would like to pursue speaking engagements to help inspire others. I also want to continue to talk to families and patients at hospitals and rehab facilities, such as Madonna, that have been in similar situations. My ultimate goal is to establish a foundation that continues to give back to others through my faith and personal experiences.
So, Mom and Dad, talk to me about anything that maybe we haven't asked yet, we haven't brought up, that you want people to know about, whether it's Derek, whether it's the book itself, or just anything that maybe we haven't discussed just yet.
I think one thing I want people to know about Derek is that everything he's been through, and Joel mentioned this, he's never quit. He kept that competitor in him, and a lot of kids look up to him. When he was right before his accident, he was you know, a big time leader on the football field, baseball field, whatever the case may be. And there's guys that still, you know, reach out to him. Nate Gary texted him before the Super Bowl. You know,
That's awesome.
A few years back. He's got relationships with, you know, like Coach Pelini. Coach Pelini and Derek are in touch quite often and talk about things. And so just how he's reached out to people, how he's helped people, and he's just continuing to do that. Couldn't be more proud of him.
No, that's very cool. Was it the year that Nate's team, the Eagles, were playing in the Super Bowl?
No, it was, I think Nate played in there about 5 years ago. And Nate and Derek used to be in the same classes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
when Coach Pelini set things up, he had certain football players go to class with Derek.
Okay.
And Nate was one of those players that went with him all the time. He's a good friend of Derek.
So I have a question about, the 8-minute flight. For those who don't know, it says the miraculous story of the boy who chose earth instead of heaven. Without giving away too much, what exactly does that mean pertaining to the book?
I guess without giving away too much, basically, it was at least a couple of years after Derek's injury. He started to confide in us the things that were happening to him when he was in his first surgery. So he basically spent extended time up in heaven with Jesus while he was having his surgery. And the book kind of recounts some of his inspirational things that have happened to him along the way. He's had other appearances and done some pilgrimages to some other places like Lourdes and the Holy Land. And so the book talks a lot about his injury, our family, football, but I think most importantly would be your faith and kind of the determination that you've had to kind of get back to where you're at. So, yeah.
So if you're a person of faith, this book is obviously going to be great for you. If, however you feel about those things, it can be great for you because it, like hearing other people's experiences. I'm always intrigued to hear what other people's experiences are because I feel like I learn more and it can help me when I'm going through, frankly, to be honest, daily decisions in my life. Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to believe in? What am I not going to believe in? Okay. So for me, this book is great for anybody out there who wants to hear about an experience like this from an inspirational young man. By the way, I love the idea of the speaking gigs. I had, for different reasons. Okay. I did speech therapy for K-5, different reasons. Okay. I would have never thought I would do public speaking one day, yet here I sit for some reason. Dude, I think it'd be awesome. If I can ever help you with anything like that, please reach out to me. Don't hesitate. Okay. I think that's something that could reach and touch a lot of people if that's something that you're truly interested in. Okay. Joel, you help people with physical therapy for a living.
Mhm.
Obviously, this is a unique situation. When you see the type of recovery that he had, okay, what are your thoughts on that process and just everything that he's come through to sit here and be here today in this inspirational state of mind that he's in?
Yeah, when you have a traumatic brain injury, it's a long process to get back to where you want to get and to where he has gotten. And there's a lot of times where they say you don't make gains after 1 or 2 years. Derek has continued to make gains and he sits here and he can communicate with people and he does everything he wants to do. And so, from the rehab standpoint, this is one of the biggest injuries you can have that takes the longest to come back from. And there's so many unknown things coming back from that. And that's the difficult part. And that's the difficult part that Derek went through. But, the one thing I want to say too is, being part of the Nebraska football family and, Derek was a big part of that. I remember when they used to 3 weeks old and they flew him to the Orange Bowl. So he kind of grew up with that, but, and you're part of the Nebraska football family and you know this, that Nebraskans kind of take care of themselves. And it was an unbelievable thing when he got to graduate the university and like a Dennis LeBlanc and Bo Pelini were all there to help the family and to these guys. And Derek became an inspiration to even that team. So, you know what? And I tell him all the time that this might be his trials and tribulations of what he's going through, but I mean, I'm a big faith guy, and I believe, hey, he's going to heaven. I have to work for it. And I don't know if you're spiritual or Christian or Catholic, it doesn't matter, but there is something, and I have to work to get there, and that's not guaranteed. But what he's going through right now and the way he's inspiring people, I think he's guaranteed to do that. And so he's one of those kids that I say kid, but young man that inspires a lot of people, and he inspires me.
So to be clear, I don't talk about it much because I talk sports.
Yeah.
So I stick to the topic at hand.
And you're a sports guy, and I'm a sports guy. We're all sports guys.
Yeah. No, to be clear, I'm a big faith guy.
Yeah.
To be open and honest, I've been very up and down throughout my entire life. But at the end of the day, I am a big faith guy, and it matters to me. And like I mentioned earlier, whether you are a big faith individual, whether you're not, whether you're just trying to figure things out, like, I think this is a great book. Again, The 8-Minute Flight, the miraculous story of the boy who chose earth instead of heaven, Derek Ruth. And I'm going to put things out on social media. If you're part of my email list, I'm going to push it out on the email list. I'll talk to DP and Rebecca. I'm sure they'll have no problem with it as well. But again, just remind folks where they can find it online and the bookstore that it's in as well.
Locally, you can purchase it at Gloria Deo in Lincoln and Omaha locations. And then it can also be purchased on Amazon. And you can look it up at the8minuteflight.com. And that would be his landing page, and it would give you all the information on there.
Okay, awesome. All right, it's interesting. You mentioned the recovery, because before you got here, they talked about the unpredictability and the question marks, and like with an ACL, you're doing this at this point, unless you fall behind or you're ahead of schedule. You know where your goals are. There was so much you got to figure it out as you go along. So, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we close the show today? I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you don't, it's no big deal. I want to make sure we're giving everything to the people we can. So,
no, I'm just very thankful that you allowed Derek to have the opportunity to be on the show. He's pumped about it. He was really excited. So, and as a family, we really appreciate everything you've done for us.
It's my pleasure, dude. I'm serious. You're welcome anytime. Like, I'm not kidding. You're welcome. You're all
chair then.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of seats here. Although I might have a new seat going. I'm not kidding, Jay. Can I sit here every day? I actually like this better.
Yeah, you can do that.
Then I can. There was an Ohio State guy making gestures at me earlier. I was kind in response, or as kind as I can be. But all right, until next time, Husker Nation. Go Big Red. Oh, hold on. We almost forgot Makovicka Physical Therapy. Yeah. So I don't know enough. You tell the fine folks everything they need to know real quick before we get out of here.
So if you need anything, go to makovicaphysicaltherapy.com. That's kind of when I retired. I went into healthcare and got my doctorate in PT and physical therapy, and we've opened 22 locations in Lincoln, Omaha, and surrounding areas. So want to give back to Nebraskans because they've helped our family a lot. Me. They're supportive when I was at the university. Want to give back to Nebraskans. So we have 22 locations, Lincoln and Omaha. So you can go to Makovicka PT. Shameless plug, but
I like it. I like it. I'm here for it all day. We discussed that Derek's going to get the royalties from that, though, by the way. We did discuss that.